is Yadiwale, as I said earlier, the General Secretary of the Forestry Climate Initiative, and it's great to have everyone here and to be part of this community where we're going to discuss about the forest. So I'm going to start with introducing Dr. Jen. She's a forest ecologist with a PhD from NC State. Our work focuses on climate change, resilience, mitigation, and adaptation. She's also a forest carbon modeler. She's a consultant with the National Woodlands Owner Association and the founder of Forestry Climate Initiative. All right, everyone, I want you to welcome Dr. Jen. All right.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. So the next person we have here is a great professor, a retired extension professor from NC State and the executive director of the National Woodland Owners Association with over 34 plus years of experience in adult education programming. His areas of expertise include sustainable forest management, climate change adaptation, land conservation, and ecosystem services. All right, everyone, I want you to welcome Professor Megalos. Welcome, Prof. So also we have here today, we have Ethan, a research forester, a biometrician, a conservationist with 4 years of experience at the Nature Conservancy. He's worked in various roles in the forest sector. He focuses on, most of his focus is on improving silvicultural outcomes. He enjoys building furniture in his spare time. Welcome, Ethan.
Ethan, you missed, were you here when Mark was showing his friend's gallery with all the furniture he was building? You missed it.
Apparently, we're going to have to double back for that. I'll show off some furniture in the back here too.
Okay. All right. So for the audience, we want you to put the questions and all your questions. We're going to read all your questions to our panelists in a few minutes. So just make sure all the questions you have, just put it in the chat. And also, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat. When any of our esteemed panelists are speaking, so if you have any question that you want to ask, just put it in there so that after now we can, ask them that question. All right, that's why it's better here. And also you can do a little bit of intro of yourself. Just put the introduction of yourself. Let's get to know you so that when we're answering your questions, we can answer the questions in a tailored way that meets your needs. So, all right. So we're gonna get started. So I'm just gonna pass the mic. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can see. I'm trying to see if I can see one or two. Okay. So we don't have okay. We are still waiting for the attendees. If you have any questions, just put it in there. So while we wait, so I'm just gonna pass the mic to Dr. Jen.
Thank you, Jay, for introducing us. And good day, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your time, and we hope you get the best from this webinar. And so the webinar is really about you to think about how you can start exploring the career options in forestry and the natural resource space, and also thinking about leveraging technology's impact in this space. So wherever you're joining us from, we're excited that you're here, and thank you again for joining. So we have 3 goals today from this webinar. The first one is to create awareness about the diverse opportunities within this sector. Second one is to empower you with the skills to thrive and, working towards becoming invaluable in this sector. And then the third one is to connect you with resources that would help you succeed. So for our friends that have thought about forestry or anything in environmental studies that was not your initial career choice, but regardless you're where you are, we want to show you that you can make the most of it and excel in this space. And we want you to start thinking about honing your skills and increasing the opportunities that are available in this space. So we hope that this webinar will provide you with insight and strategies to help you navigate your career. Connect with us if you have any questions. As Jay has said, if you have questions, put it in the Q&A box. We will go in and try to answer as many questions as possible. And if you're thinking about the skills that you need to upskill yourself, where you can find yourself in terms of job opportunities, anything that you're thinking about, just put it there and put your background. I will answer those questions. And thank you. And I would pass it to Professor Mark, if you have any words for our audience.
So we're so glad you're here today. Both Ethan and myself, you'll hear more from him. He's closer to your age and experiences, so pay attention to his presentation for sure. But I have actually been in the realm of forestry work since my undergraduate degree, and that's now 44 years ago. But my connection to the earth and interest in the environment goes back to the first Earth Day. So I was there as a 9-year-old. I just want to say that forestry has been a passion of mine. I'm a registered forester. I found a community and compassion and like-mindedness in this greater profession. And so I'd encourage you, if you like the outdoors like I did, was raised in a rural area, or just appreciate that, then this is a great profession. And Dr. Jen and I have been working on a workforce development to increase the diversity in the forestry profession. And we can talk about that, and if you have questions about that later. But we're excited about this work. I continue to work in it in my retirement just because of that passion. So I'll stop there, and we look forward to talking with you more later.
All right.
Okay. Should I jump in, Jay, or do you have more?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to.
Sorry, Ethan, before you jump in, I just got a message that the chat is disabled for some reason. So I'll try to figure that out. But in the meantime, attendees, if you can, please introduce yourself in the Q&A box as well, while I figure out how to enable the chat. Thank you for letting me know. So yeah, just introduce yourselves in the Q&A box if the chat is not working for now.
Okay, awesome. So thank you, Dr. Jen, Jay, and Mark for pulling together this webinar series, and for inviting me to be here. I'm pretty excited to talk to the group this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. And yeah, this is sort of my journey through forestry in the last 10 or 12 years. And this may not be the route that everyone takes. It's not going to be the route that everyone takes, but it gives you an example and some ideas of how you might fit into different positions, what skill sets you might need for those different positions, and how one can go about advancing through a career in forestry. So just by way of a little more introduction of myself, I wanted to start from a place of personal motivations. And I mention this because I suspect that this might be something that a lot of people in the room here share. That I'm passionate about both trees and people, right? The environment and helping people are the two things that have driven me to choose my career path. And I really think that education, scientific research in this realm makes the world a better place. It has the opportunity to provide impacts larger than just myself. And that's really motivating for me. So the opportunity to use forests productively, I mean productively in terms of timber, wildlife, but also human well-being, is a pretty big motivating factor for me. So what I'm going to walk through today, I'm going to give a a sort of brief overview of all the positions I've had since graduate school. So I've got, 3 or 4 positions to recap briefly. And then I'm going to go into a little more detail in my current position, which is at the Nature Conservancy working as a research forester. After that, I'm going to try and make some connections between my work and the sort of technological tools that I've used. How does tech change the world of forestry? And then I have a few closing thoughts around how you can move through a career in forestry, how you can advance, and what some strategies are that you could use to help find the job that you really want. Okay. So I started off with my first job out of graduate school as a research biometrician, and I worked for 2 different universities, Purdue and the University of New Hampshire. And basically, what I did was I ran I ran a series of scientific studies at the direction of a professor at a university. So I designed and developed all the field studies for this lab, led the training of field staff, collection of data, QA, QC on that data, anything to do with sort of the direct collection of information from the forest, bringing it back to the office. That was my job. And then once back in the office, rainy days, snowy days, what have you, coding, statistical analysis, modeling with that data. So this was like really the foot soldier of science, so to speak, like the person getting the work done on the ground. In order to do this job well, I mean, I had to have pretty deep knowledge of specific fields. So the labs that I worked in were all about quantifying forest resources, and that's my area of expertise. So in order to do this job well, I needed depth in that area, but I also needed broad quantitative skills, right? To be able to be leading a variety of different analyses, I needed to be pretty flexible in terms of my quantitative skill. You don't have to be deep on each of those subjects, but you have to have some depth here and there with a broad analytical toolkit. You have to be able to have good technical communication skills. Like you need to use the right technical words in the right spot. You need to use the right words for modeling and being able to make those things understood to somebody who might not have the depth that you have in that area. And then, yeah, this is a field job. So you got to be willing to get money. You got to be out in the field. You're hiking up mountains. You're going through swamps. So, the ability to code and do statistics is important. So is the willingness to deal with bugs and mud and, sweaty afternoons. From there, I went on to a position very similar to what Mark mentioned he did for a long time, was as an extension forester. And this is all about, engaging and educating both landowners and professional foresters. So met with a lot of individual landowners to help them understand what they could do with their forest. Worked with foresters to provide a sort of consult second opinion for them on a lot of the properties that they manage for their clients. And then providing state leadership, province leadership in my areas of expertise. So there was, again, the forest inventory, and I took on a new role here in terms of invasive plant management as well. So what I needed to do this position well, this was a little bit different because you needed really broad forestry knowledge. You needed to talk to people about wildlife and water resources and timber inventory and all these different things. You didn't have to be able to go into a ton of depth on any one of those, but you needed to be able to talk about a lot of different things. So broad knowledge, and the desire to continually expand that, learn new things, add new pieces to your toolkit. And really the communication aspect. This is going to be a theme throughout my presentation, that the ability to communicate these soft skills around punctuality and organization and email and phone communication. All those things are really important because they help you connect with the people that own forests, that manage forests, that impact those resources that we care about. And really the hallmark of extension is this phrase, meet them where they are. Where are they physically? Go to them. Don't make them come to you, because that's a barrier, right? What do they need? Don't give them something they don't want. Give them the information that they are asking for that will help them make decisions. And then, can they hear us? Are we using the words that they can understand? Don't use technical words and jargon. Use words that they can understand, right? And like try and communicate with them in a way they can really hear you. From the extension forester position, I got a position as university faculty at the University of New Hampshire, where I was for 3 years. I taught all core forestry courses. And put students from 18 to 80. Forestry is a field that attracts a lot of continuing education students, some of whom I had a lot of students out of the military in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I even had some continuing ed folks who had retired from some other position and went back to school for forestry. So you got to be able to connect with a broad range of people. And you gotta want to do this, mix of lecture education and field-based labs, because forestry is a field-based science. And so I put all the same things for this as I did for the extension. You gotta communicate. You gotta meet those students where they are. You gotta have the desire to continually be learning and growing your expertise so you can turn around and teach that to other people. But you also need some other things to be university faculty. Mark, you're familiar with this. It's the publish or perish dynamic. If you want to be a faculty, you got to publish papers, right? You have to have a curious mind, because a professor, a university faculty, is supposed to be out there pushing the boundaries of knowledge, right? And you have to be really self-directed, because you drive the ship, right? Nobody else is pushing you to do X, Y, and Z. You got to have your own ideas of what do I want to teach? What do I want to research? How do I want to develop my career? You need to be self-directed in that kind of a role. Okay, so that's sort of my background. I've had, that's from 2013, so about the last 10 years before I got my current position. Those are the jumps that I made through, and where I ended up landing in my current role is at the Nature Conservancy, where I am a research forester. It's a much broader research element than my previous role. It's not focused exclusively on biometrics, but on forests generally and the people that use them. And so my duties include all aspects of the scientific process: designing studies based on a need on the ground, developing ways that we can collect data or understand that system, analyzing the data that we get to understand what is the answer to our question, communicating those results. And again, communication is really important. And then using those scientific studies and conclusions to drive organizational strategy. The Nature Conservancy, we like to call ourselves a science-based organization. We use that science to make decisions. And so that's a big part of my role. And I do this in a natural climate solutions team. So I want to spend just a moment defining that for people to make sure you know what I mean. So when I say natural climate solutions, these are deliberate human actions that protect, improve management, or restore natural and working ecosystems with the specific goal of mitigating climate change, right? And so there's lots of different ecosystems that human beings manage. We manage them for lots of reasons: for food production, for fiber, for timber, right? But natural climate solutions are going into that paradigm and saying, okay, let's also manage for climate mitigation. Let's manage to push back on global warming, essentially. And this all boils down, the whole field boils down to this carbon diagram that many of you have seen in middle school and high school science classes, right? And it's all about, natural climate solutions is all about trying to tweak and enhance that carbon cycle to sequester or store more carbon in a forest, a wetland, whatever, and to reduce emissions from those areas. So it's about optimizing this carbon cycle. We think this is important because, again, this is probably a graph many of you have seen. This is sort of the trajectory for, our business as usual emissions. And this is the line we need to get to if we want to limit warming to 2 degrees C. Well, if we look at the sort of space between those two lines, part of this wedge right here is the mitigation that needs to happen. And a pretty big portion of that we think can be derived from natural climate solutions. So that's why we particularly focus in this area. So I want to now give you one detailed example of, like, what do I mean on the ground? What does the natural climate solutions do when you're actually in the woods? And so one of our biggest, most popular examples is reduced impact logging, and reduced impact logging for climate specifically, so RIL-C. This is a series of very logical, pragmatic principles about how you manage a forest, how you cut trees that reduces impact. So on the left-hand side here, you've got a picture. This is from Indonesia, and that's a typical skid road in Indonesian forests that's built with a large bulldozer, right? So it creates a lot of soil erosion, it kills vegetation, and it generally leaves an aesthetically unpleasing forest, right? On the right-hand side, same site, same operator, same logging company, but this log they were pulling out with a winch that's got a 100-yard cable on it that they can drag out into the woods. They attach it to the log and they pull it back. So rather than having to drive into that area with a bulldozer and creating damage, we're mitigating that damage. We're leaving more trees intact and alive to store their carbon on site. Right, so pretty practical elements. Another example, there's a lot of trees in the tropical world that have hollow centers. It's a natural part of forest ecosystems, but those trees generally can't be commercialized in the way that solid stems can. So when you fell a tree like this with a hollow center, oftentimes that wood gets wasted and it's emitted without any value to people, right? We're not deriving lumber from it. And so on the right, we've got a tree without that hollow. And you can test. You take a chainsaw, while it's running, and you stick it into the stem and you hear the sound, right? The sound changes if there's a hollow portion in the center of that stem. It's a very easy thing that you can do. You do that before you fell the tree. If it's hollow, don't fell the tree. Leave it standing. Easy enough. And really the context that's important here is that across the tropical world, if you average things out, for every one tree that we harvest and turn into wood products or paper products, about an additional 5 trees are killed through skidding, through haul road construction, through felling, and those trees are left in the woods. They're not commercialized. So we have a really big opportunity if we could change that from 1 to 5 to 1 to 3. That would be a huge reduction in our emissions from forestry, and we'd still be getting the same amount of products at the end of the day. So there's a really big opportunity here. However, when you get down to the ground, things get complicated. So one of the places that we're doing reduced impact logging is in the Republic of Congo. And we're working on a project that is collaborative with Interholco, who's a concession manager, a private for-profit company, and the government of the Republic of Congo. And so the idea is the government wants to incentivize companies to do better forestry, and those companies want to make sure that they make additional profit from that. The way TNC fits in is in trying to create the analytical tools and the economic incentives that bring carbon financing into that realm. But it gets really tricky because you've got all of these different organizations with different motivations, different things that they need to account for in their operations. And so you're trying to balance the needs of a for-profit company, a government, and an NGO. That's challenging no matter how you do it. So this, I just want to show some of the cool stuff that we get to do and some of the pictures from the field. This is the fun part, right? Out here, measuring trees in the forest, meeting people. That's the good stuff, right? This was about 2 weeks in 2022 that I got to be in the field with these people collecting data. Since then, I've been at my desk doing data analysis and writing and working with other partners to try and get that data used by the government of the Republic of Congo. So I get a little bit of time in the field and I get a lot of time back in the office trying to make things work. So now I just want to give you sort of the broad overview of like, what are a few of the different projects that my team at the Nature Conservancy works on. So from a high level perspective, we try and work what we call here this, climate smart forestry integrated model, where basically we're saying, you know what, forests are used for lots of different things. Yeah, they can be used for conservation, but they can also be used for timber production. Yes, they can be valuable for wildlife. They can also be valuable for local communities. So we're trying to take a holistic approach, and then we're trying to look at where are the knowledge gaps? Where is there information that's lacking that would help people make better decisions about how they manage forests, if they manage forests, what their goals should be, what the opportunity is. That's where we think we can fit in. We can provide information that helps people make informed decisions. And so we do that in a variety of places. I'm going to point out a few different examples here, but this is, again, just a smattering. So we work in Mexico, primarily in the Yucatan Peninsula, and we work with community forest owners called ejidos. So these are communities that have tenured rights to forests in Mexico, and they manage those for the betterment of the community. So we help them improve their forestry practice, increase production in terms of timber production on their forest, but also do forestry that stores more carbon. We help them develop carbon mitigation projects where they're actually getting paid for storing more carbon rather than cutting more trees, right? And so we're giving them a diversified income stream. And we're also helping them to understand that they have the rights to that carbon. There's a lot of places in the tropical world where, just say it, like there's carbon development firms that don't treat the community owners right. They don't give them a good deal. And we're there to try and give the communities information that helps them make a better decision. And, again, I got all these nice pictures from the field, and I've got this one in the corner to show you that, yeah, I got to go to the field in Mexico, and then I spent a bunch of time back in the office doing the stats, writing the code, writing the reports, right? And you gotta like both parts of that to enjoy this job. We also work in Belize. We have a big vine cutting research project in Belize where basically we're trying to understand when you cut vines on trees, we know those trees grow faster. Science has been looking at that for about 30 years. But how does that vary by tree, by location, by how many vines were on the tree to begin with? And this guy right here, absolute rock star, Denver Cayetano, is our partner on this. So I get to partner. He's a Belizean national who's a PhD student at the University of Florida. And I get to work with him to develop the core of his PhD program and get these projects put in on the ground. And I also get to do all the stats and the coding and the writing, right? That's there in that project as well. And lastly, I'm just going to highlight, we work heavily in the voluntary carbon market space. And you're going to see this for the VCM, you're going to see that more and more in forestry. It's becoming a big topic. And so we're just trying to do the same thing. Where are their knowledge gaps? Where is there information that would help people make better decisions that they don't currently have? And so we work on methodology development. What are the equations that people should use to calculate forest carbon? We work in leakage, understanding, when you don't cut a tree here, does it cause somebody to cut an additional tree somewhere else? We work on durability. When we conserve a forest and we increase carbon, how long does that carbon last? And how does that work in the global carbon cycle, right? You gotta think big on some of these things. And so we really think that there's an opportunity, again, to provide information that helps people make improved, informed decisions about what they do with their forests. So now I want to transition just a little bit, and I want to talk about in each of these roles, and I'm going to talk sort of across those roles. How has technology changed what I do on a day-to-day basis, and how do I incorporate that in my work? So from a broad perspective, the why of forest technology is pretty easy to understand. Information is expensive, right? Data is expensive. You have to, oftentimes in forestry, travel somewhere, go to the field, spend lots of hours measuring, sampling trees, determining which areas to measure, and then taking the time to, wrap a tape around a tree. That's physical movement and time to get there. That's expensive because people's time is expensive. And so if we can find reliable information in more cost-effective ways through the use of technology, we can get the same quality of information at a lower cost, making forestry more profitable, which keeps more land as forest and less land as, developed agriculture or parking lots or whatever it is. And these new technologies that are coming out, the speed of new technology in forestry is speeding up in the last 10 or 15 years. There's a lot more tools. And when those come out, be it LiDAR that you guys have heard about, or carbon methodologies now, or any of these tools, they're really in demand. Because when a new technology comes out, not everyone knows how to use it. And so if you can capitalize on that, and you can be the technology person, that's a valuable skill set that people want on their team that they want to collaborate with. So it makes you attractive as an employee or a collaborator. So now I'm just going to give you some concrete examples, right? So let's look at some basic inventory tools. Right, so this is a sonic hypsometer that measures the height of trees with a sonic signal instead of a clinometer. I've got a laser rangefinder for finding the distance to given objects, and a GPS unit, right? These are all relatively basic tools. This is essentially a digital tape measure. But that digital tape measure saves me the 7 seconds that it would have taken to walk to that tree and walk back. 7 seconds isn't a big deal, but when you measure 1,000 trees a day, every day, that adds up, right? And time is money. So these things help you get more efficient answers at lower cost. That's what, business is all about that, right? Then there's more advanced tools, right? Here I've got a terrestrial LiDAR unit. I worked with that extensively at the University of New Hampshire. And this has this piece right here is a whisk broom sensor that sends out a little laser beam, and it maps entire stands of trees in amazing detail, right? So this is a tool, this is providing data that we couldn't get before, right? There wasn't an analog version of this because to measure all the branches in these trees would have been too time consuming. Right? So this is now a tool that's providing information that we didn't even have. So this is changing the way that we are able to look at forests. We can ask new questions, right? We can quantify the woody biomass in twigs. That wasn't a thing that was possible 10 years ago. Staying on that sort of remote tools, there's all sorts of airborne, spaceborne, drone-borne sensors that we can fly over different sites and collect information, right? Some of this is data that you pay for. Some of it is data that's freely available online. Some of it is data you can collect yourself with the drone, right? But all of these things are, allowing you to measure, quantify, look at different aspects of forest without having to go to the field, right? You're getting this from a satellite or an airplane that flies over a site, but you don't have to walk out into the forest. So that's a huge cost savings, right? But it also means you have to work around corners, right? Because you can't physically reach out and touch the tree, right? So you have to figure out clever ways to measure that tree accurately. So this is an example right here. This is my employee is working on a project right now where he's using Sentinel satellite data, all right, which is freely available online, and he's running it through what we call a convolutional neural network. So basically an AI-assisted algorithm, which then develops automated road mapping layers. And so this lets us look at logging roads, and you can see that this maps out when was the logging road built from 2019 to 2022. This is again in the Republic of Congo. This is a huge benefit to governments that want to know where the forest managers are cutting trees, for the concession owners who want to be able to map and utilize their road networks efficiently, and for the Nature Conservancy who's trying to quantify carbon resources and how extensive road systems are. This kind of data, which we can generate from the office without going in the field, it's not perfect, but it's useful, right? And so there's lots of things in here: change detection, resource quantification. AI and machine learning are becoming huge parts of the forest industry, and there's very few people that can really run that technology. And lastly, because I'm a statistics nerd, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the advance in statistical sciences, right? And so whether it's a better way to model the data that you have, whether it's a dynamic baseline for carbon programs that use real remeasured data, statistical tools are letting us get more information from the same amount of data, or in different cases, less data to get the same amount of information. So like this is really a cost savings and an effort savings, right? You can be more efficient in the work that you're doing. Okay, and I have just a couple more slides here. I want to give some closing thoughts about how one could advance through a career in forestry, how I've sort of strategized that route for myself. So the first thing I would say is that no skills that you could develop, be it in undergrad or graduate education, as a professional, in continuing education, no skill is without value, right? And I'm highlighting this picture here. This is from my graduate research. That's me in the green shirt. And I'm digging up roots for biomass allocation, right? So I spent a lot of time with a shovel, but I also learned how to run an excavator for that project. So I was using heavy equipment to excavate tree roots, right? That's a very hands-on skill. For the same project, I also learned some really whiz-bang modeling around biomass allocation that was super complicated. So I've got this high-tech statistical thing, and I've got a nuts and bolts practical element. Both of those have helped me in my career, right? The stats is what I do more day to day, but knowing how to run an excavator as a forester, that lets me know a little bit better what the field crew that is running a harvest operation for me is capable of doing, because I've run some of that equipment, right? So a lot of these skills, they're more portable than you think, right? When you learn to identify, so I learned to identify plants in the northeastern US, right? So I know all the plants in that area. But then when I go someplace else, when I go to the Republic of Congo, I don't know the tree species there. I don't know the plant species there. But because I've learned how to identify plants, I have a faster start to identifying plants in the Republic of Congo. So even though the plants are different, the skill is portable. And I would just highlight quantitative skills, the stats, the technology, the data analysis. That stuff is in demand. That has been a big inroad for me to find collaborators, because I have those skills and people want to work with me because of it. Secondly, I'd mentioned, for a lot of foresters, I hear this phrase, I don't manage forests, I manage people and expectations. A big part of forestry is about the people, because the people control what happens to the forest. And you have to be able to communicate with them, help them understand where you're coming from, and help provide information that lets them make informed decisions. So the communication is critically important, and don't overlook those soft skills. Spending time developing interpersonal skills is valuable time spent. Be creative. I was talking to Jen about this the other day, right? Any idea that you can generate, that you can add to a conversation, right? It doesn't matter if the person you're talking to is this super senior scientist who's wicked smart and all this stuff. They're still going to benefit from you putting out your idea, right? They want to hear what you have to say. So be creative and share those thoughts. Networking. Man, when I was in undergrad, people told me, oh, networking is a big thing. And it's a scary element, because you're trying to meet people that are established and senior in a field that you're trying to break into. But at the end of the day, remember, those people got into this field for the same reasons you did. They like the outdoors, they like plants, they like working with the environment. So you have similar motivations. Take any opportunity that you can to talk to those people. Find them at a conference, meet them online, send them an email. People are always willing to talk about their jobs. You want to find out what a job is like? Find a person with that job and ask them. They'll talk about it, right? People love to talk about themselves, and people love to help, right? So when when I go to Mark and I say, hey, Mark, can you help me understand how forestry works and blah, 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 like, he's going to feel important because I've asked him for help. Right. And so that's a big thing that you can do to sort of ease that conversation with people. And my very last point here, don't underestimate how important it is to be a kind and helpful person, right? When you are a collegial and fun to work with person, people are going to want to work with you, right? Be welcoming, be generous with your time, help others. That's going to make you a collaborator and an employee that people want to work with, right? And I did repeat kind and helpful on here, because I think from my perspective, that is where forestry starts and it's where forestry ends. We need to be helpful. We have information that the world needs that the world doesn't have. And darn it, we can make the world a better place if we share that with people in a kind and helpful manner. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'll hand things back over to Dr. Jenny and Jay. And I think you'll say whether we have time for questions or not.
Could I just say amen to what Ethan just said?
Right. That's a powerful. Okay, Dr. Jane wants to say something?
Yes, I was just going to say thank you so much to Ethan. You really, when I said Ethan was going to be the guest speaker, I knew, I figured it out. Thank you so much. And there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on based on what you shared. I was just taking notes. First off, I have a friend that's also was in the military and is also interested in, options, career options and natural resource space. And at some point you mentioned that, and I was like, that would be great for, connection to him.
Mm-hmm.
If you have people that have also gone through the military and then been in the space and in the profession, that's just a good connection for him. And if you have any advice or options, that would be very great. Second thing I wanted to touch on was the fact that forestry is diverse. Not only forestry, natural resources is diverse. And that is what I want young people to know. And I think I want to create more awareness on that. When I started, it was like, I was just thinking I'm either going to be a professor or be in the woods logging wood, but there's so much in the forestry space. If you're interested in the field, you're going to be out in the field. If you're interested in data analytics, geospatial, remote sensing, you can do that. You can connect both. There's also the opportunity, there's also the community engagement part. If you're somebody that likes to talk, that likes to share, communicate with people, you can be in the space. There's another thing, there's the research, there's the thinking, there's the writing. If you're someone that is inquisitive, that want to find out more about things, that want to write papers, that want to just keep researching stuff, you have that opportunity. And when people say forestry, you do physics, you do quantitative. I did like soil physics, you do quantitative physics, you do statistics, you do biometrics, you do inventory, you do natural resource policy, you do entrepreneurship, and then all of those skills are built in, and you're a good manager, right? You're a manager when you're doing all of these things. So while you're building on your hard skills, think about the soft skills that you're honing as well. And all of that is very valuable in this space. Just another thing I wanted to share was, then you also get to work with the cool technologies, the machine learning, the AI. I was so impressed with the logging project that you guys are doing. Who would think that a logger is sitting in his office or in a computer in this day and age and using that? And that's why I call this Forestry 4.0. I don't know if you guys have Googled what Forestry 4.0 means. It's just the meaning of the advancement of technology, AI, in natural resource profession. So guys, this space is wide. Just start building your skills and figuring out what interests me. Do I want to be on the field? Do I want to be in the office? Do I want to have a mix of both? And then honing your skills towards that. Then I also liked the fact that you did the root biomass. I know we've shared a joke about it, and I have very nice pictures. I'll try to pull it up and share and show people that you also need to do that hard work, right? You also need to do that work if you're interested. And it's not just, you just need to put in the work to get what you want. One other thing, yes, again, the networking. Mark, do you remember when I came 7 years ago? That's how I met. Mark remembers. My second baby was a baby, 6 months old or 3 months old, from Nigeria. I came to the United States. I didn't know anybody. I was emailing people from Nigeria. Mark can share you the story. I was just emailing people. We came to North Carolina. I was working through the offices in what's our building at NC State again, Jordan Hall, and I was like, knock. I'm this person. I'm interested in forestry. I went to Texas NCA&T as well. I did that. Luckily, I got a break. Jordan, yes, thank you, Ola. I got the breakthrough with a professor that was like, we met at the pavilion in front of Jordan, and he was like, I'll see what I can do. And then I got on the flight. I came back to the Nigeria, and right at the airport, I got, yeah, we can get you, if you want to come over. So and even after I got in there, I was not scared. Yes, there's a bit of like level of being fear, like Mark, Ethan explained, but I still put myself out there. I kept on networking, and that's how I got to the space that I am in, even in my 9-to-5 job and the job I'm doing with Mark, with the National Wood Owners Association. With Ethan, it was a connection, right? Ethan, we were connected through Shegon. Everything has been a connection for me and the way I've moved. And that's another thing that we're trying to do at Forest Region, is to build that connection for you. And these connections that you make, you never know how it's going to help. Once you guys are connecting, again, I don't want you to feel like you're connecting for what you want to gain at that point. Just build this open connections of relationship. A connection that you made 5 years ago might then pan out in this current time. So be open-minded as you build those connections. Thank you. Ethan, do you want to quickly jump in?
Yeah, I want to comment on that same topic, Jen, because I see a couple questions in the Q&A box where people are saying, what do I do after I get my degree? How do I figure out what I want to do before I start a PhD, right? And undergraduate and graduate education teaches you lots about your topic. It teaches you the nuts and bolts of forestry. But then there's some stuff that you have to learn on your own, which is what aspect of this very diverse field that Dr. Jen is talking about do I want to work in? Do I want to be in the field? Do I want to be a forest statistician? Do I want to teach? Do I want to do forest management? Like all of these options are open to someone with a forestry background, but where do you want to go? And so very much what Jen is saying, go talk to people, right? This is the element of, I guess you could call it self-education, right? I'm going to go talk to, Mark McGallows because he has expertise in cooperative extension. I'm going to go talk to, Susie Smith because she's got expertise in human dimensions of forestry. And just ask them what they do. Ask them what they enjoy about it. What do they not enjoy about it, right? You might have an idea of how much time you want to spend in the field, in the woods. Ask them how much time they spend in the field in their job, right? Like, again, people are very willing to talk about themselves. And so if you're not sure what you want to do, find some things that sound a little bit interesting and then keep pulling on that thread. Go ask questions, find new people, because they will give you the details that you want. You just got to ask them.
And take every opportunity for a part-time job or a internship and test the waters. You're not committed to a whole career. So I was just looking at some of the jobs, urban forestry, doing tree work locally and seeing what that's about. Landscaping was something I did in the private sector. Cruising timber for a summer or for a season. Seasonal work with the U.S. Forest Service or the National Park Service. Sometimes going in an area where you know nothing is the most eye-opening experience you can take. Travel overseas if you're fortunate to have a university that has scholarships and the like. Some of the best learning you can do is putting yourself outside. I worked on a saw crew for the U.S. Forest Service, and my colleagues were tribal members from the Nez Perce Nation, Hispanic workers, local folks, who this was a leg up for them or a way to make it to their next job. So all of these things were wonderful. I planted trees for a consulting forester in the private sector while I was working my way across the country on a motorcycle. So you can pick up knowledge and skill sets. You don't have to plant 1 million trees to become a good tree planter. But if you're planting 1,300 trees in a day, you're going to be pretty good at it after that day. And there are things you can do in your youth that are not committing you to a whole career while you're single, while you have health care, those kind of things. So I'll stop there. Thank you both.
All right. Thank you. Hold on, all right. Thank you, Ethan, for that insightful and engaging presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the audience did also. Your expertise itself, it's it's 100%. I love the way you presented and all the information you shared. And thank you so much. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage all the attendees. Just draft your intro in the chat box. I know before the chat box was not open, but now it's open, so you can draft your intro in the chat box. You can also send your Q&A. If you have questions for Ethan or Professor McGallows, you can put it in the chat, in the question and answer. And also there's a poll that's showing in front of you. I don't know if everyone saw it. If you see it, just try to answer that poll, which is good, so we can have this session, we can make it engaging. So that's what we have. So in this next, before we go to the question and answer that for the panelists, I just want to take a note. I want you to I want to do a little bit of a presentation. All right. So I'm going to have a background music, and after the presentation, we'll move from there. All right. All right. So now I invite you all to take a moment. I want you to envision your dream forest. So just imagine the creeps, the fresh air filling your lungs as you slow down or winding path, surrounded by the lush greenery and serene sound of nature. So as you picture this peaceful sanctuary, consider the types of trees you would include in this forest of your dream. Would you opt for a soaring redwoods with their towering trunks and leafy canopies, providing ample shade and habitat for a variety of creatures? Or perhaps, would you prefer a graceful birch tree with their slender trunks and vibrant color-changing leaves, adding a pop of color to your forest? Are you adding a pop of color to your forest? Maybe you would like to incorporate fruit-bearing trees such as apple or cherry trees, not only for their value, but also for their sweet and delicious fruit they produce. These trees can also provide a food source for local wildlife. So in addition to the trees, so let's think about additional features you would like to add to your dream forest. Would you include a crystal clear stream running through the heart of the forest, or provide while the stream is providing a source of water for both plants and animals? Or perhaps would you prefer a tranquil pond where you can sit and reflect on the beauty of your surrounding? So, but whatever your preferences may be, let your imagination run wild. Just create the perfect forest for you. So you can do that at the chat box. Just put those information. Just imagine, write down your imagination in the chat box. So that's this for this session. All right, thank you guys. All right, so we'll move to the Q&As. Please, guys, I want you to, just imagine your dream forest, and let's have this conversation so we can know. So the next step, we're going to go to the next step. So it's going to be our question and answer session, and I will start with Dr. Jen. So the question I'm going to ask you, a lot of people are here, in the chat box, they are asking different questions about, how do I get started and all that. So what motivated you to pursue a degree in forestry? And what was your research focused on?
Thank you, Jay. What motivated? Well, the common practice coming from Nigeria is not to study forestry. Many people that are in forestry, wildlife, marine biology, and any natural resource studies are usually people that didn't get a course of choice. But for me, interestingly, I actually wanted to study botany, but somehow found myself in forestry, and I'm just like to study plants. I don't know why. What I would say is that, but while I was studying that, the only thing I was thinking about was being a professor, being a teacher. Opportunely, right after college, I started working at the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture. If we have folks from Nigeria, they will be conversant, and people that have done international work they'll be conversant with that research institute, but it was a research institute. And while I was there, you know, I was working with researchers all over the world that were funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates. And so I was in that environment that was helping me to engage in thinking, advancing myself professionally. And then I started thinking about graduate school. And then I came here to the United States and got my degree from NC State University. My research focus was just leveraging on trees as a natural climate solution, just as how Ethan had explained in his studies, in his research. So I also did biomass, excavated roots. I tried to share the picture a bit. You know, plant the trees, manage the trees, thinking about the spacing, fertilization, and location of where the trees would be. Cut the trees. I did cut some of the trees, oven dry them just to measure the biomass, and then did statistics. You have to do that. Do data analytics to quantify the carbon that they've sequestered, that is stored in their wood as biomass and also in the soil. So that was my research focus. And then as I started getting advanced in my graduate school, in my PhD level, I also started thinking about what I'm doing. How is it feasible in the community? How is it applicable? I don't want to do a research that is just, you know, you do like we do a research, we publish the papers, we put it in the science world, and that's it. I wanted to make sure that what I was doing, people in my community can actually relate with it. So I took some courses at NC State. There was one about environmental entrepreneurship. If we have folks from NC State that are here, I would encourage you to take that class. That class really helped me start thinking broadly. And so I started doing community engagement, and that's how I started understanding or becoming more aware of the gap and the disconnect between what we do and what the audience or people outside perceive that we're doing. You will be surprised that some people are not even aware of what forestry is. The people that do know what forestry is don't understand the whole situation about forestry. They just think it's a low-paying job and you're stuck in the field. And so I started getting to understand that. And yeah, that's been my research focus, and that's how I found myself on forestry. If to summarize, thank you, Jay.
That's great. Thank you for that. So I'm going to go to the next panelist. Eden, I'm going to ask this question. Your presentation is great. So I wanted to ask, what motivated you to pursue a profession in forest and the natural climate solution space?
That's a really good question. And it's it's a curious question. So I could answer that in any number of different ways. Why did I get into forestry? Because in undergrad, I started off as I was a chemistry major and I was doing lab sciences, and all my friends were going outside for forestry courses. And I said, I want to go outside too. I want to go play in the woods with them. So that's one thing that got me there. Two, I grew up camping, hiking, spending time in the forest with my family. So I feel a deep personal connection to the forest. Three, I see the environment as a big issue in the modern world, and that I want to work on something that I feel matters and makes the world better around me, so I can help in the environment. And fourth, you know, and I just said this to somebody in the Q&A, I find myself drawn to quantitative computer-related fields, right? And there is a niche for that in forestry that makes you very attractive, because a lot of people who get into forestry get into it because they don't like quantitative and they don't like computers and they want to go play with the trees. I love those people. I want to work with those people, and I can bring the quantitative skills that they need, right? And so I saw an opportunity for myself. So all of those are sort of reasons why I got into forestry initially. And Jay, I completely forgot the second half of your question. There's another element, isn't there? Oh, and you're on mute. Hold on.
Sorry, I'm back. So the other question is, you know, it's just putting it together. You know, what made you pursue a profession in forest and in natural climate solution space?
In natural climate solutions, you're right. That was the other part, and that, I will be perfectly honest, that fell out of the clear blue sky and bonked me on the head. And you know, that's another thing about this whole networking thing that I think is worth mentioning. So how did I end up in natural climate solutions? I was a faculty member at a university. So I taught during the academic year, and then I had the summers to do research. I got a contract working for this organization called the Nature Conservancy, and they wanted me to do some carbon modeling. Okay. I did that carbon modeling. I met some people. I saw what they were doing. And eventually a position opened up at the Nature Conservancy, and I applied for it. They actually asked me to apply for it. They contacted me. So, you know, I had that extended job interview just because I was out there trying to meet people doing things that interested me, right? So I wasn't a carbon person or natural climate solutions person until about 4 years ago, and I got this position and I learned it on the job, right? But I brought in broad skills in forestry, understanding forest management and trees and how they grow, in statistics and quantitative, you know, modeling and those sorts of things, and forest inventory, how to measure trees, how to quantify timber, wildlife benefit, et cetera. And all of that works in the natural climate solution space. I just didn't know that that space even existed until 4 years ago. So another reason to go out and network and ask questions, because there might be things that, like, I mean, shoot, I love my job. I enjoy what I do every day. And 5 years ago, I didn't even know it existed. Right. And so that's the benefit to me of going and networking and meeting people, is I learn things like that and I find an opportunity that fits me.
All right, thank you so much for that answer. I love the fact that you love your job, which is very important. So once you love your job, you live a better life. So now, the question for Professor Mac, um, in this meeting, in this webinar, you have the most extensive career among all the panelists we have here, which is a great thing. You're a retired professor, and now you're the executive director of an organization at the forefront of encouraging woodland owners in environmental stewardship. So how did you find yourself in this role? And starting from your role in the public sector with the U.S. Forest Service?
So, excellent question. And I think if I'm looking back today, I find that it's all connected. If you studied ecology, you know, you pull on one string and it's connected to the rest of the universe. So I started out measuring trees, planting trees, cutting them down. That was the physical part that appealed to me as a young man. As time goes on, you'll know, as Ethan said, you spend less and less time in the forest and more in front of a computer. Or in my work, I was a bridger, you know, somebody who lived in two worlds, the forestry world, explaining that to the environmentalists who were opposed to some of our practices. I was trying to motivate landowners who control the resource. Here in the eastern part of the U.S., the majority of our forests are held in private ownership. And so being the resource person who could bring the knowledge from the university in this instance to better their lives. And unlike some of the specialties that Ethan talked about, I'm a generalist. I had to know a little bit about taxes, growth and yield, the policy that drove these things, cost share programs. I'm an information gatherer. And one of the beautiful things about that is that if you share it, it's not a valuable resource. But if you can share it to a numerous audience groups, I would train tax assessors on what forestry was about, what to look for in a forest to see if a place was well managed. So I think it's an evolution in thought. I came from a family of that were migrants or immigrants to the US. Their parents believed in education. I believed in education. Like Jan, I was paid to go to school. So I got my undergraduate degree, and then graduate school was a no-brainer for me. I was making X amount of dollars as a seasonal. I can get healthcare and a new degree for the same amount of money. And so I came to North Carolina, and that opened up the world for me. but a part of that career has been wanting to give back. So I gave back. I have a service mentality or servant leadership style. And once you get that, you can't go back. I'm a lifelong learner, which is what extension professionals try to advocate. And I'm continually picking up skills. And in many cases, I'm being inspired by the doctors in the world who show up on my doorstep asking for access to a degree. I didn't have access at the time, my colleagues did, but here 7 or 8 years later, I'm looking at Dr. Jen, who's the not the spitting image of me, but the Mark who showed up at NC State 40 years ago looking for a degree. And here we are today working together, and she's smarter and more intelligent and more driven than I ever was. And so now I'm inspired by her. So I'm becoming an administrator, which I never thought I'd be. I've become a policy expert by being thrust into the national stage by virtue of my position. I'm running grants that I ran away from as a professor because I already, that took away from my work at the time. And now it catapults my ability to mentor the next generation and even learn entrepreneurial skills from them. So Ethan and I started out in the public sector, but we have always worked with private sector individuals, and there are aspects of their work that are similar. They're finding something new to do every day for a new client. Our clients showed up on our doorstep and we were already paid for those services by virtue of our employment and federal and state and county tax dollars. So we never had to look for work. It came and finding us. Now in this new realm, I'm looking for opportunities, not just for myself, but to sustain the organization. And it's a great place to be. The interesting things is that foresters never seem to retire successfully. And so I caution you about that. But I also welcome the specialists in the world, those who can do modeling, GIS. I just bring this out to set the stage. We have in our pockets a stronger computer than the one that was used to put man on the moon 50 years ago. And so there's no end to what you can do. And it's in terms of networking. Before I retired, I worked on a mentoring document, a networking document to help young professionals. And we can share that through Jen's network. Let's do that. But one of the things with this technology in our pockets, we can go across the globe asking for help or following people. They may not even know how inspired you've become by their profession and their accomplishments. And we can do that without interfering with them. Then when we have our confidence, we could ask those pertinent questions that Ethan said, like, what's your most fun part of the job? So, and there are books out there, it depends how you want to learn. Podcasts, wonderful. There's so many ways to be inspired by the current generation, but not to be, don't be locked into what I did. You're going to make your own way. And in fact, the limits that were imposed on many professionals in the past are eroding. And the gender issues and those kind of things, there are groups. Jen has inspired me with her work with the Women's Forestry Congress, and all of my colleagues. It's possible today to learn from somebody who looks like you. And as a Greek immigrant or a child of Greek immigrants, I don't forget that. There were 3 people that looked like me or spoke like me when I got to NC State. And that was neat. And I think the forestry world and much last half of my career has been in diversifying the look of the forestry world. And so don't let that be an impediment. And if it is, let us help you overcome that and put you in a place where you can blossom. So I'll stop there, Jay, because my soapbox is
All right.
done.
All right.
Can I throw in two things on top, because Mark, you put great ideas in my head on two counts. First of all, so there's a space in forestry for someone who looks like you. That idea. Not only is there a space, but that's something that you can use as a marketable skill, right? Like if you're from someplace else, you have a different perspective on forestry. People in other places want to work with that, right? Like I work for the Nature Conservancy. We're in 70 something countries around the world. If we saw an employee who said, well, I worked in Nigeria in forestry for 10 years before like, well, that makes them more attractive to us because they know what forestry in Africa is like, and maybe I don't, right? So that's a selling point in a lot of regards. The other thing, Mark flashed this, and so I should have mentioned this in my technology thing, because one of the things I'm working on right now, with a collaborator at Purdue, who I met through grad school, we were both at Purdue together. They are using, if you guys know, there's a LiDAR sensor in iPhones up in one of these things, and they're using iPhones in a way that they're developing an app that's going to let you scan forests, very much like that terrestrial LiDAR scanner that I showed. And I get to be their field collaborator. I don't know anything about LiDAR data. I don't know about phones, but I have colleagues who do. And I'm the guy who then says, yeah, sure, I'll take your fancy app and go out in the woods and measure some trees. And yeah, so there's always opportunities. If you're the person in here who said you're drawn to computer related fields, you want to go develop an app that uses LiDAR, like that's something we actively need. So there's a ton of opportunity out there.
All right. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that information also. I want to ask a follow-up question to Professor Mack. I want to ask what keeps you learning and exploring after all your time in the profession? What keeps you learning and exploring,
So you can have passion for the job. Don't forget the balance of your passion outside the job. So when I reached the 30-year mark in my career, I realized that they were going to wear me out and I had to start taking care of myself. So for the last 8 years, I go out every morning and do exercises, stretching. I do it because it's not in a gym. It's in my native environment that allows me to do the forest bathing. I'm up at the crack of dawn, which inspires me more than computer time. And it also grounds me. So it doesn't matter, biker, walker, jogger, bird watcher, do that thing so that you can be healthy in your workaday world and that you'll be able to be there for your grandchildren or the next mentee that comes along and needs your help. So it's physical fitness, it's mental fitness. And sometimes that comes with age when you have the freedom. My children are grown, but they're still with me. They're not children anymore. They're as old as my career, right? 36 or more years old, and still with me. So I need to be healthy for them to help them get through their life stages. But more importantly, to be out there and to earn the things that money can't buy. That's, friendship, collegial nature, the partnerships, even the errant phone call, I need your help. That's what I have learned and what sustains me. And it can be a philosophical thing, it could be your religion, but when it becomes innate, then you can't stop it. And hopefully you'll take that in your path, you'll still be serving people.
All right, Prof. Thank you so much for that answer. I learned so much, and I understand that the impact, because when I gym or when I want to do exercise, I'll do it indoors because probably New York is a little bit. So I think I need to start going into the into the nature to get that feel. So to Dr. Jenny, I have a question for you. We know that the organization that organized this event, which is the Forestry Climate Initiative. What motivated you to start an organization like that? Forestry Climate Initiative. All right.
I'm muted. Thank you, Jay. If you know me personally, you know that I'm always like very curious and always thinking and inquisitive, if you know me. But like I said, when I started doing this, going outside of my science bubble, still science, but doing more of community outreach and engaging people, I became more aware of this gap that is happening, where we feel like we feel like we do great stuff with science, we do great work, but how many people understand what we're doing? And I think Ethan touched on that a bit about the kind of terminologies that we use. There's a misconception with the environmental groups about what we do, and then there's some people that don't even know what we do at all. So I've had that at the back of my mind. But then breaking points were, first, my daughter, she's 8 years old, and she went to school and she told her classmates in 3rd grade, my mom is a tree scientist, she's excited, my mom is a forest scientist. And she came home, she was like, they didn't believe me. They were like, there's nothing like that. That doesn't even exist. I'm like, they didn't even say, they said like, that doesn't exist. So I was thinking, if she had said my mom is a rock scientist or some other kind of scientist, they probably would feel like, I haven't heard about this before, but this is a possibility, right? But they could not just think that it was a possibility. And I was like, though they are young, but it still felt, somehow. Second thing, unbelievable, I wouldn't even believe this. So recently, last week, we were on a company retreat, and then we were talking about the things that we've done in the company, activities, and they kept on talking about the forestry team, the forest carbon team, and someone was like, this is the first time I'm hearing forestry. This is someone in my company. This is the first time I'm hearing forestry. What is forestry? I was like, what do you mean? She was like, she works with the legal department dealing with contracts. She's like, what do you guys do? I'm like, and you're in this environmental company and you've never, she's like, no, I haven't. So this is someone that has obviously gone through college, most likely law school in the United States, and doesn't even know what forestry is. So we have an issue here, right, guys? And this is what we're trying to do. So for those of us that are in this space, how do we communicate with people? How do we let them know that we exist, we are there, and we're at the forefront of providing solutions to the global change that is happening? So I say global change intentionally, not only climate change, because it's all interconnected. When we say climate change, everyone is thinking about the carbon from the atmosphere, the fossil fuels, but there's also the health parts, and that is related, right? There's also the health. So that's why I talk about global change. So how do we create this awareness for people to know that we are here? And for those of us that are here, how do we make ourselves, like I've said, invaluable and prepare ourselves for the workforce? So some of the things I want us to think about. So if you're an undergrad and you're thinking about, do you want to go do grad school or do you want to go into the workforce? If you're thinking about grad school, start connecting research on research interests that interest you, right? Research topics that interest you, and start connecting with professors in that space and networking. If you're interested in the workforce, whether undergrad, master's, PhD level, what I recommend is start Googling the jobs that interest you. Look at what is out there. Then write down the skills that are being asked for. So Google like a job position. For example, you want to be a carbon analyst. What do you require to do the job of a carbon analyst? Do you require R skills? Do you require Python skills? Do you require statistical skills? Do you require, what are the skills that you need? And start building those skills and networking with the people in that space. Send people LinkedIn connections. Just keep connecting with people, right? So Google the positions you're interested in and build your skills in that space. And then if that's what, then the other part is what, again, if you're interested in using, like doing the work that Ethan is doing, data work, modeling, what are the model languages you want to learn that also make you competitive? So those are the things that I want people to start thinking about. With Forest, that's why we started Forest Region Climate Initiative. And we are hopeful that moving forward, in the future, we're also able to start, have some level of being able to push policies, right, that would also encourage more climate actions. I don't know if you guys heard about, on Earth Day, President Biden just signed, I think, or they talked about having 9 billion something for the EPA's solar program, and that was huge. So not only forestry, but just solar work. And they're also trying to do an American Climate Core initiative, or putting more money into that. So for those of us that are in the US, those are spaces that are just increasingly becoming more aware of what we're doing, and you can tap into those spaces. So that's the reason why we started Forest Region. Thank you, Jay.
Right. Thank you so much. So Dr. Jen, that's great. Forest Region Climate Initiative website is in the chat box, so you can check it out. And also you can also go to the Instagram and follow if you need, so you can see the things that's really being done by the organization. So I have one last question for Ethan, because we are about to round up. So and this question is in regards to technology, all right? Because you talked about what technology has been doing. So what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your work, and how does technology help address them? That in the let's just say in 7 years ago, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
not being a solution. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So forestry boils down to people, right? People control what happens to the forest. And one of the biggest challenges in my work is when we have two different options, right? Could be lots of different scenarios, but we've got a natural climate solutions option, and we've got sort of a business as usual option, whatever they were doing before. This could be a forestry context, but it could also be in an agricultural context or something else. And basically, a part of my job, part of the Nature Conservancy's job, is to work with private industry, individual landowners, and convince them of the value of a natural climate solutions option relative to a business as usual option, right? So I have to convince them and say, like, hey, it's going to have a positive impact on the climate, it's going to have a positive impact in the local community, it's going to have a positive impact, blah, blah, blah. But it's also going to let you continue your commercial operations, right? Which is what most of those people are primarily concerned with. And technology helps me provide information that demonstrates to people the value of a certain action. And so it could be remote sensing that maps out the logging roads, which I showed. It could be some of those basic tools that have helped me quantify forest carbon as a way to explain to people the benefits of certain actions. It could be some of the modeling tools that let me demonstrate that a certain action doesn't decrease timber revenues, right? But all of those technological advancements let me provide the information that is going to help those people make better decisions, right? And I'm not unbiased in this perspective. I want them to choose the natural climate solutions option, right? But I need to provide evidence that convinces them, that persuades them of that, right? I can't make them do it. Oftentimes there aren't regulations or really anything governmentally that pushes people towards those ideas. So we need to convince them. We need to show them, and data and even if it's just a picture from the field, right? That is very convincing for people. It makes them feel like I can really understand why you're wanting me to do a certain thing, right? And so I think the technology has been very helpful in that regard, because Yes, I can go to the Republic of Congo, I can collect some data, I can do some statistics and talk to somebody. But when I can show them images from a satellite that says, look, this is a change that's so big you can see it from space. That's convincing for people.
Right. Thank you so much for that information. And I was eager to learn that, and you provided that information. So as we round up, I have a general question. I just have two that, or we can say one, so that we can round up. The first question for the panelists, is a general question. We can take it. What skills or qualities would you recommend students to develop to succeed in the forestry careers? Maybe I'll throw that to you, Professor Mack.
So just a few quick ones. I think curiosity is a key one. Willingness to learn, willingness to ask questions, and maybe the simplest questions. I think that goes a long way. And then flexibility in schedule and travel and those kind of things, critical early on. And then as you learn more about yourself and the career, you can make that perfect match. But curiosity is the place, willingness to learn.
Yeah, I want to double down on that, and hearing your first couple examples there, Mark, it's a humility, right? The willingness to ask simple questions and put yourself out there, right? That's something to be learned. Creativity, to be able to look at a complicated problem and not just think of the obvious solution, but think about how you could get around a corner to answer a question, being creative in how you approach problems. And I'll say it again because I've said it 9 times. It's about people. And so what can you do? You can approach your work with love and kindness. And doesn't matter if you're in forestry or anything else. That's what's going to really make connections for you with people. And I think that's critically important.
I will add perseverance, just trying again and again and again. You get no, it's all right. You move on to the next thing and try again.
All right. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to do one last question, general questions, and can round up. So I want to ask this question to all the panelists. Can you share any advice or insights for students interested in pursuing forestry as a profession, particularly in terms of educational path, internship, or networking opportunities? All right.
Yes.
Anyone?
Yeah, I want to jump right on that because we're talking about like networking. Go ask somebody about their job. Internships, get a seasonal position. But there's sort of an in-between thing that I think we haven't mentioned yet, which the term I have in my head is ride-alongs. Right? You see somebody with a job that you think maybe I'd be interested in that. Ask them if you can go to work with them for a day. Just spend a day with them, following them through, seeing what they do. Right? You're going to go out and mark timber for a day. Can I come along with you and see how that works? You're going to go talk to a landowner about the timber harvest you do. Can I just be a fly in the wall and see how you talk to them? People generally are okay with that option, and it gives you a little window into their world.
All right, thank you so much. I'll let Professor Mack to go so that when Dr. Jenny answer the question, she can do the closing remarks. All right, Prof.
So the networking piece is professional societies, clubs at the university. Many times you can check in, check out. There are no repercussions. Volunteer experiences, whether it's building a house or pulling invasive weeds, everybody needs your help. And you can get to talk to people on their terms over lunch. Good gosh, how much good learning takes place while we're sitting together in fellowship and eating. Everybody has their guard down. They're real people. And as Ethan said, just ask. Everybody's willing to help. Or I'm struggling with this concept. Could you explain it?
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to speak for our international audience here that are looking for, educational pathway to network. One advice, one recommendation, I'll have two actually. Get 3 mentors. Get a mentor that is early career mentor. That's someone that is closer to what you've just passed through or where you're at, middle, and then high, someone that has extensive career, like what we have set up here. Myself, Ellie, Ethan, mid, Professor Mark, high there. And that way you can kind of project, in life, change is the only constant thing, but then you can start to work towards and project yourself in that way. So mentorship. And then when you're also connecting before you reach out to someone, don't just reach out, have something that you want to show. For example, you want to connect, I'm interested in this. What have you done in that space? What does your resume look like? What volunteer experience? So start volunteering, getting more things that you've done, even while you're in Nigeria or anywhere across the world, such that when you connect, there's something, you have valuable stuff that people can connect to, and that they can direct you to the resources that you will need to help you move forward. That's what I have. So thank you all for joining us. Again, I just want to, before we round up, if you have any question, 1 minute, can you raise your hand? Otherwise, we'll just close it up. Thank you, guys. Start with your friends. Also, this is a webinar series. We hope to continue to do this. And we have seen from the poll that what people are interested in is learning more about career options in the space and how they can make themselves valuable in the space. So we will start building our webinar series along that line. We'll start bringing more people in different spaces, people from, if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in community work, we'll start getting people into the space. Otherwise, I don't see any questions. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Professor Mark Magalos. Thank you, Ethan Belair. Appreciate your time. Have a good weekend. We'll keep your contacts and send you for future invitations for our webinar series. Thank you all.
All right. Before you guys go, I have a quick information. So if you want to follow up after this meeting, you can follow us on Instagram with the Forestry Climate Initiative. I already put it in the chat box. If you have any question for any of the panelists, you can send us an email, then we'll forward it directly to them. And you can read more on our website, www.forestryclimate.org. So just take note of that. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Cool.